answers. Governor?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. In Arizona, wildfire season is year-round, and communities across the state are at risk on any given day. That was just reiterated for us during the recent fires in LA. But as we head into the hot summer months, obviously that risk is a lot greater. And just under the leadership of Director Torres, the Department of Forestry and Fire Management is making sure that the state is well prepared for another intense wildfire season. The department has treated over 23,000 acres in the state since July, and the goal is to have 30,000 acres treated by the end of the fiscal year. Also, last year, with the signing of the bill to join the Great Plains Interstate Fire Compact, it makes resources much more available to us when we need them the most. The department has been conducting interagency trainings with local districts and our federal partners, and I know that those partnerships are really strong, which is really critical as we head into the season. And the prevention campaign, Spark Safety, Not Wildfires, is really critical when we're talking about prevention. So I want to talk about that because really that is what we can all do most to help mitigate the wildfire season that we're headed into. We all need to take personal responsibility and make sure that when we are outdoors on public lands, we are not leaving campfires unattended, that we are being as cautious as possible when using tools that could that can cause sparks, use spark arresters, securing chains on vehicles, and not pulling vehicles off the road into tall grasses. These are all things that can be incredibly risky and spark wildfires. Also, target shooting and fireworks, not things that are allowed on state lands. As well as protecting your own property, that's really critical, clearing dead vegetation, moving flammable material away from your home, and removing leaf litter from rooftops and gutters. All of these actions will help lessen the intensity and risk of fires spreading and allow our firefighters to do the work they need to do to put out fires as quickly as possible. Most fires are human caused, not maliciously, but just by taking these actions, we can all do our part to prevent them. Wildfire prevention saves lives, it protects property, and preserves our land, and we all have to work together to mitigate the impact. Thank you all so much, and I will turn it over to Chief Truitt. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Hobbs. Today we are able to present Governor Hobbs with our fire season potential outlook. And after discussing that, we're just going to again reiterate that we're coming off of several years of drought. We're experiencing a very extreme dryness out in our vegetation this year, so much that it's a heightened awareness that any start is going to go, and it's going to really tap into our resource and our ability to fight fire. That's why it's so important to have that cooperative, with our federal partners, our local fire departments. Basically, the Arizona Fire Service in general is going to be tasked this year just due to the dryness of the fire season that's at hand. I do want to emphasize again what Governor Hobbs stressed on was public education. A lot of our starts are human caused, and those are they can be preventable. So just be cautious when you're out using clearing your properties, out recreating, doing towing chain. We just had a recent incident where we had a chain drag 20 miles and created 18 new fires within that 20 miles. So that tells us that the probability of ignition is way up. So again, use extreme caution when you're out in the woods and when you're doing your clearance. And most important, your clearance around your structures allows us and our other fire departments to get in and defend those communities and do our best to eliminate and kind of prevent any structure loss. So with that, again, be careful and good luck.
get to others. Go for it. Yep.
John, not that we've done this a few times. Last year, you told us, well, it was a very wet winter, and therefore we had a lot of grass that was going to dry out. This year we had a very dry winter, and yet we're still in a fire. I mean, is this just, I mean, we keep doing this, so is a wet winter versus the dry winter? I mean, you know, make us understand, because last year was all about the wet winter. We didn't have rain for 200 some days. So talk to us.
Yeah, so again, it's all seasonality, and it's over periods of time. So as we get a wet winter, obviously we get the fine fuels growing, and that a wet winter and an extended winter will shorten the fire season up. Now that we went into this fall with the very dry conditions, all that carryover vegetation now has dried, and it's about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time as far as curing goes. So we're looking at an earlier curing of the fuels and a longer duration of a fire season. You know, anytime you add wind like that to a fire environment, you're going to get catastrophic loss. So for us, our awareness is always there. We're always going to be looking at how we can defend our communities. An average summer day can lead to structure loss if we don't do the prevention measures out there. But again, a lot of us have been doing this for a long time. We've fought in fires out in the West. It's not unusual to have those type of fires burn through those urban interfaces like that, especially when you put hurricane force winds behind them. You're going to get catastrophic loss. We're trying to prevent that. Public education, our response time, working with our Department of Emergency Management on, doing our due diligence on pre-season planning, doing evacuation procedures, those kind of things, just to keep the public safe.
Is there something about this season though that's more intense than previous?
My personal opinion, yeah, it is. It's a lot drier, and a lot of fire service folks here. I've been in the state for a long time. This is one of the most critical years that we've seen in our careers. So now you're going to have an average. You don't need an extreme event right now to have fire carried, and we'll have multiple fires carried through the state. Once that comes, that really stretches the resources very thin then. And then with all the other stuff like you mentioned going out through the West and over in the East Coast, national resources are at a drawdown right now. So we have to be very cautious on how we're going to aid our partners out West. We need to maintain our staffing here home, and we always will do that, stay diligent, and make sure we have enough coverage here in the state.
Staffing, we're talking ABC 15, looking to know if there is adequate compensation for firefighters. Expressed to us struggles with meeting, staying competitive with other firefighters, or staying up with inflation. Do you feel like firefighters are being compensated adequately, and if there's any change that's needed?
Well, with, again, Governor Hobbs' support, the increase in firefighter pay will help. But again, with the way things are going with inflation, with the competitive status of other agencies, we really need to make sure that we're paying our firefighters top dollar to attract, the most qualified folks and have that big recruiting pool available to us. Again, what I stated before is anytime you put that kind of wind condition behind a fire environment, there is potential here in the valley. We have that vegetation growing, very close to the outside of the communities. You have those multi-track homes. Once it gets established within those rows of homes and you're driving it with the wind, that becomes the fuel driver. It's no longer the vegetation, it's the homes. So we've all been involved in our careers with those Santa Ana type winds, the Lahaina type winds. We can have that here. It may not be as frequent as they do in California, but we do have that potential here.
Are you anticipating any impact from the federal funding cuts that are coming in on the ability to fight fires, whether it's grants you rely on or cooperation with federal?
No, and on the grant side, I can turn that over to our director. But as far as the partnerships we have with our federals that we meet with them very often and coordinate our resource response and our resource availability. Right now, it does not affect us. It does not affect them on our staffing and the resources that they can provide us.
A lot of the conversation in California was preventative measures by the government not cutting down the dry vegetation. Can you talk about preventative measures and what you mean by treatment?
Yeah, with the Department of Forestry and Fire Management, we have our wildfire mitigation plan. And what that plan is to go out and look at potential areas, high risk areas, and go out and do what we call a fuels reduction, get that fuel loading to a point where that fire isn't going to be so intense where it's going to take and drive into that community. So we're working with our federal partners, and again, our director can go into working with our federal partners, but we're doing large landscape, trying to get the forest and the vegetation back to its natural fire regime that we call. Right now it's overstocked. We've been fighting fire a long time. We've put that in that consideration, in that condition, but right now we're doing a lot of preventive measures by trying to thin that vegetation down to where it's a more natural type fire spread.
Hey, good morning. I'm Torres. I'm the Director of Forestry and Fire Management, also known as the State Forester. So the question about federal grants and federal resources, I'm happy to say that we have not experienced any cuts to already awarded grants, whether they're for making resources available to our partners that include local fire districts or monies that we use to work with our federal partners to address wildfires. So we are in constant communication with all the jurisdictional authorities, that includes the feds, on how we respond to and manage wildfire incidents.
We have other fire-related questions.
So two things. Is the staffing level of the state adequate today for this upcoming season? And what's the budget look like as it starts?
So regarding staffing, we are almost fully staffed. This is the time of year where we bring on some of our seasonal firefighters that man staff some of the engines that you see behind me. We are on pace to staff all of our positions that we are funded for. With regard to funding, that is always a very difficult question to answer, because it's really dependent not only on the number of starts, but where they occur and how we fight them. Last year we were really aggressive, and it showed because we expended a number of resources and funding to pre-deploy. That's one of the ways in which we help communities prepare for wildfire, is we pre-deploy resources, and we're sought to increase the number of aircraft in the state. We're doing the same thing this year, so we track our funding and our costs on a regular basis, and so it's hard to say.
I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't seen what those conditions are. I will say that the entire way that Senator Hoffman has conducted his Dino committee from the beginning of session is not seemingly in line with the agreement we came to with the president. We are still looking at every option we have to ensure that my directors, who were selected and nominated by a bipartisan transition team, can get the confirmation they need to continue running the day-to-day operations of the state.
And then my second question, I'm glad you brought up that agreement with Senate President Peterson. Part of that agreement was withholding Karen Peters from the Department of Environmental Quality, but I understand when you resubmitted her nomination in February. What has changed, if anything, that allowed you to resubmit that nomination after you said you withheld it?
It was never an agreement to withhold anyone. It was part of the agreement that we were going to have ongoing conversation about directors that may have problems getting confirmed and getting through that, and we've been working through that with some of these folks.
And so you think republicans are open to having
I hope so. Yes.
Spider squishy little macro things like 5-minute city, 15-minute cities.
Well, she's been an incredible leader on some of the really tough environmental challenges we're facing right now that are quite frankly impacting some of our economic growth or potential for economic growth. And so having her in that position to continue working with the business community, with the environmental community, and meeting those challenges is critical.
Jeremy?
Governor, can you comment on the status of the Colorado River water negotiations? It seems like the clock is ticking and we haven't really seen much movement lately.
I can tell you that those negotiations are ongoing. I think looking at kind of the approach that the Trump administration is taking is something that we've all been looking at, but they're continuing.
How has that changed under the Trump administration?
To my knowledge, it hasn't changed. I think we just wanted to kind of see if we needed to look at a different approach.
You say, when do you expect any kind of agreements to happen? Again, it seems like there's been much movement lately.
Well, we're on a deadline of 2026, so there's still time, I'm confident with how the negotiations are going.
Governor, we haven't asked you for a couple of weeks about the Diamondbacks and their pitch to the legislature.
Yeah.
To get funding from municipalities. But since we asked you last time, the county has opposed the latest version of the bill. So you have the city of Phoenix and Maricopa County now not in favor of what's happening. How does that impact your stance on the bill and how you are viewing it?
We have been involved in the ongoing negotiations, and I think we're close to getting to an agreement. And I don't want to jeopardize negotiations, but I think we'll get to an agreement that appeases the concerns and keeps Major League Baseball in Arizona.
Are you willing to sign a bill if either the city or the county are opposed to it?
I don't have a red line in the sand, and I'm hopeful it doesn't come to that.
Speaking of bills we haven't asked you about in a while, Senator Peterson's SB 1164 Inheritance Act they've taken out the part that would call local jurisdictions to sign these 287 enforcement agreements, but still have some of those other provisions requiring some form of cooperation. I'm wondering where your stance is on that.
My stance hasn't changed. We need to work with law enforcement and not force them to do things with limited resources and unfunded mandates. I know that every law enforcement agency I talk to wants to cooperate with other law enforcement agencies to keep violent criminals off the streets, and I don't think we need a law that forces them to do that, especially not one that's an unfunded mandate.
Governor, you've been Secretary of State. How do you think Alexander Cullen would be a Secretary of State?
I haven't given it a second of thought.
Second of thought. Well, give it a second.
Look, this is an election that is almost 2 years away. I'm not even concerned about it. I'm focused on my job as governor.
How did I know you could say that?
Haha.
Are you concerned about your own election, or you just mean the Secretary of State's race?
I mean, I'm continuing to govern. I think that's the best way to earn re-election.
Governor, there is an election happening in a few months.
Yes.
Are you planning on taking an endorsement in the primary for the CD7 race?
I'm not going to get involved in that race. No.
I have a question. I understand that there have been some measures taken to try to help alleviate some of the funding concerns for DDE. Do you have an updated date on when DDE will run out of funding?
I don't think that's changed. I think we're still looking at an April cliff.
And then do you have a comment, of course, this week the legislature is going to be looking at that funding just went on like your administration has done so far?
We just announced last week measures that we are taking to help rein in some of the costs. That's something we've been looking at since we knew that we would need a supplemental to ensure that families who rely on this funding can continue to get the life-saving care that they need.
But that's delayed. That doesn't help us this fiscal year. We're talking, even your press aide said
Well, you saw my supplemental request. That is what triggered the need to implement these cost measures, and that's what we're doing moving forward. The supplemental request, as I've said over and over again, is a routine part of budgeting when caseloads are different than what was projected. And it's no different than, well, it is a lot different. But the Republicans will continue to come at defending their bloated ESA program and make political threats.
To keep the program from running out of money.
I mean, that's what you
Explain that.
Ta-
The second question, how the Trump tariff going to affect your economy?
how does what?
Affect.
So yes, the tariffs are Trump taxes. They will be passed along to consumers, and I think a big concern about how they're being implemented is just the chaos and uncertainty that it's creating. They're on one day, they're off one day, they might be on the next day, and you're seeing how the markets are responding. It's creating all kinds of chaos that at the end of the day is not lowering costs for anyone, which is something that this president ran on.
All right. Let me ask one more related back to the Secretary of State. Again, somebody understands this. The president has issued another of his edicts. He does even more executive orders than you do, Governor. One of his says that we're going to require documented proof of citizenship for everyone, including federal-only voters. Obviously, you understand the Election Assistance Commission, ABBA, and everything else. Do you believe the president has the power to decide that federal-only voters in Arizona have to offer DPOC?
So I'll say this with saying that I haven't had a chance to really delve into this particular executive order. But as with most of these orders, the president has certain executive authority, and other times he's showing that he thinks he can just change the law by saying it's so, and that's not the case. I will leave that up to folks who are going to probably file suits and challenge that, and the courts to decide. But I think he's absolutely stretching the bounds of executive authority.
Just one more quick question on something we also haven't talked to you about in a while. Prop 123. Where are those negotiations at, and do you think that's going to the voters this year, or is it just being kicked down?
The negotiations are still ongoing. I am still hopeful that we can see something passed this year. I think it's really important to get something to the ballot this year. And we're still having those conversations. So,
All right. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.